Hey everybody, Dustin Schmidt back here again today, and today we're going to be checking out the internal ND on the C500 Mark II and comparing it to the element filters, full spectrum NDs that I also have. So it's not going to be a direct one-to-one comparison because the full spectrum element filters go from 1 to 7 stops, and the C500 Mark II goes in increments of 2, from 2 to 10 stops. So we'll probably start with the 8 stops and kind of work down from there, just for comparison. And yeah, let's see how it looks. I'm interested to see, are we going to see IR pollution on here? The Canons have really good internal NDs, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. But I want to check the kind of the comparison. I've got the the full spectrum IR&Ds to use with my Komodo. I guess if you wanted a little more granular control, you could use them on the C500 here, so you could not have to adjust your ISO, things like that. So let's do some tests and see how it looks. We've got a big bleached muzz, diffusing the light here, a little bit of neg on this side, and that's pretty much it for our setup here. Another angle of view there. Sun's coming from up over this way. All right, so here we are at 0 stops. Just C500 II, no ND, nothing in the signal chain, just so you can see, just straight up what it looks like. We're on the Sigma Cine 28 millimeter, stopped all the way down to T16 just to get a good general exposure. A little bit of a color chart up there. Here you can see how that kind of looks on the vector scope. Everything's kind of where it should be. Let's see our skin tone indicator. So everything's kind of on par. It's right where we want it. Here's our waveform. See, everything's kind of in range. So there's our baseline. So now we move over to 2 stops. And this is 2 stops on the C500 II and 2 stops of the Element Filters FSND. Let me pause here for a quick second and just say, I did 1 through 7 on the Element Filters, but in order to keep this consistent, I decided to just show you the 2, 4, 6, and then since Element doesn't go to 8, the 7 filters against the 8. And then the other thing I discovered, just because of the way the sun was, doing this on my own, is I tested the C500 II first, and then I moved on to the Element Filters. And so you'll notice that for 2 stops on the C500, I'm at a T11, and 2 stops on the Element Filters, I'm at a T8. Now, initially, because of those differences, I did shoot all of this at native ISO 800, but in order to normalize these, I needed to pull the Element Filters file down to 400 in post so that these would be the same. So that's the only thing that you're seeing here. You will see that across all of these. On the Element Filters, I pulled it down to 400 on every single one of those because I was basically, a stop hot on every one of those. So that is the only difference and the change here between these two. So hopefully what you can see is everything's normalized then. If I go over to our waveform, you'll see our whites are basically at the same spot. Our shadows are at the same spot. We've pretty much got the same exposure. Okay. So we're in the same ballpark here. Now, to my eyes, these look extremely similar. They're almost identical. And I'll put up and play some of that so you can see it probably full screen here. So like I said, we are very much in the same ballpark. The one thing that I'm noticing across all of these, and I'll probably talk about it when we go to the 4 stops here, is there is some slight difference in color. In terms of transmission and just overall luminance, I think we're in the same spot. So let's move on to our comparison of 4 stops. And here's our 4 stops. Same thing, if we switch over now to our vector scope, let's skip up to our 6 stops. Forget what I just said. So we're at 6 stops here now, and we've got both the charts off, and you can see we're pretty much in line, but there is some differences here. Now, so here's 8 stops versus 7 stops. The 7 stops pulled to 400 ISO in post to kind of normalize these. And you'll see we've got basically the same exposure across here as we look at our parade here. And I'm not seeing any ND, IR pollution really at all on the C500 Mark II. Skin tones are right along the skin tone line. Our colors are mostly lining up between both filters. They're both doing a fantastic job. The biggest thing that I could pull out of this is really that the C500 Mark II's internal NDs are really fantastic. They don't shift the color that much, if at all. So the element filters is a little more saturated than the internal NDs. You'll see if I just apply kind of a -3 on the saturation, it just kind of pulls those back to be in line. See if I go back to 0, a little more saturated on the element filters. Again, the element is here on top in the timeline. And if we go to just a -3, that pulls that in. They're almost, spot on with each other. Greens are a little bit out of whack, a little more shifted. But, everything in these warm tones is pretty close, almost right on the line. So the Canon is really doing an amazing job, and no IR pollution really at all on the Canon. I would have no problem using Canon's internal NDs over these, element filter NDs. Really makes the C500, NDs really nice for run and gun. You don't have to carry anything extra. If you want to adjust in between that, those 2 stop jumps, I think you can easily go from, 800 down to 400 in terms of the ISO just to make up that stop, or vice versa, go from 800 to 1600, super clean still. And there's a nice comparison between the two where you can just look at the blacks, pay attention to the shirt and the blacks and the shadows, look at some of the greens in the background there. There's really no brown creeping into that and no red creeping into the blacks. Just a phenomenal job on that C500 Mark II. And kind of a good comparison to, a camera that's really hot right now, which is the Sony Burano that people have posted about it having some really bad IR pollution. And you're not seeing that here. And I think that's really a big plus for a camera like the C500 Mark II, which is several years old now and is really holding up. So, yeah, that's what I got today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.